Silence was supposed to be absolute in the presence of Alpha-Prime Grix-Morthak, but apparently nobody had informed the human about traditional dominance protocols. And judging by the chaos unfolding in Containment Sector 9, she seemed to be operating under entirely different guidelines that involved something she called circle time and positive reinforcement techniques. Field observer Zek Torin adjusted his recording apparatus for the 63rd time this cycle, his sensory organs struggling to process what his equipment was documenting. In the reinforced habitat below, Dr. Kate Morris sat surrounded by 12 Voidhound cubs, each one a perfect example of apex pack psychology, designed by evolution to respond only to fear, pain, and absolute dominance. They were currently singing. Forward command, this is Observation Post Delta 7. I am requesting emergency consultation with the Psychological Warfare Division. His transmission carried harmonics that his species reserved for reporting phenomena that challenged fundamental understanding of reality. The human subject has achieved something that violates every known principle of Voidhound social hierarchy. The response crackled through quantum channels layered with enough security protocols to protect military secrets. Observer Zek Torin, your previous reports have been flagged for potential equipment malfunction. Are you absolutely certain about these behavioral observations? Zek Torin consulted his datapad with appendages that trembled from prolonged exposure to impossible events. Forward command. I am observing 12 juvenile Voidhounds engaged in what the human describes as group harmony exercises. They are taking turns, sharing vocal responsibilities, and demonstrating cooperative creativity. These are creatures whose neural architecture is literally designed for pack hierarchy enforcement through violence. Through the habitat's reinforced viewing barriers, Dr. Kate Morris was conducting what appeared to be a music lesson. The Voidhound cubs, each possessing intelligence that rivaled most sentient species and instincts, honed by millions of years of evolution to establish dominance through aggression, sat in a perfect circle harmonizing melodies about friendship and kindness. Now, Howl, remember what we learned about listening to others before adding your voice. Dr. Morris's tone carried the patient authority that made hardened military observers suddenly remember their own developmental years. Music is most beautiful when everyone contributes their unique gifts to the whole. The cub designated Howl, whose natural vocalizations could shatter reinforced barriers and drive prey species to paralytic terror, modulated his voice to blend harmoniously with his packmates. Like this, Miss Kate? I don't want to be too loud for the little ones. Perfect, sweetheart. And Pack, what do we say when Howl shows such good listening skills? 11 other cubs, each capable of calculated pack hunting that could bring down armored vehicles, responded in unison, "Thank you, Howl, for being a good pack brother." Zek Torin transmitted this exchange with voice patterns that suggested his worldview was undergoing systematic reconstruction. Forward command, the human has somehow reprogrammed pack loyalty responses to emphasize mutual support rather than dominance establishment. This shouldn't be neurologically possible. Explain the containment parameters. Dr. Morris was assigned to Xenobiological Research Station Kepler 9 as a specialist in what her personnel file describes as early childhood development with focus on behavioral intervention. When Voidhound eggs were recovered from a destroyed smuggling vessel, standard protocol called for immediate destruction of the specimens. Zek Torin pulled up files that made progressively less sense with each review. The human disagreed, strenuously. On what authority? She cited something called Universal Child Protection Standards and threatened to file formal complaints with an organization she referred to as the proper authorities. When pressed for identification of these authorities, she provided contact information for entities that our intelligence networks cannot locate in any known database. The scene in the habitat shifted as Dr. Morris began what she called problem-solving practice. 12 creatures designed by nature to establish pecking order through combat were participating in collaborative puzzle activities that required cooperation, communication, and what could only be described as empathy. Storm and Growl, you both want to work on the same section of our project, Dr. Morris observed, facilitating what should have been a dominance conflict. How can we solve this in a way that makes everyone happy? Storm, whose jaw strength could crush military-grade armor plating, carefully considered the situation. Maybe we could work together. Growl is really good at the detail work, and I'm good at the big pieces. I like that idea, Growl responded, his natural pack instincts somehow redirected toward collaboration rather than competition. Storm can handle the heavy lifting, and I can make sure everything fits perfectly. The cooperative solution they developed demonstrated problem-solving capabilities that exceeded theoretical maximums for Voidhound cognitive development. More impossibly, it involved voluntary subordination of individual desires for group benefit, behavior that should have been genetically impossible for their species. Forward command. The Cubs are exhibiting advanced social intelligence that our xenopsychology departments didn't know existed in Voidhound neurology, Zektorin reported. His sensors tracking interactions that challenged every known model of pack psychology. The human has activated developmental pathways that contradict millions of years of evolutionary programming. And the Cubs' response to traditional dominance stimuli? Non-existent. Yesterday, our head of security attempted a standard alpha challenge protocol to test their reactions. The Cubs... Zektorin paused, checking his recordings again. They invited him to join their art therapy session and asked if he needed a hug. Indeed, the Cubs had transformed what should have been a territorial confrontation into an opportunity to demonstrate the emotional intelligence skills Dr. Morris had been teaching them. They recognized aggressive behavior as a sign that someone needed support rather than submission. The security chief's response? He participated in finger-painting activities for approximately 2 hours, then requested transfer to a different facility. His exit report cited fundamental questioning of career assumptions and unexpected emotional development. Zektorin's mandibles clicked in what his species considered nervous laughter. Forward command. These Cubs are not just learning human behaviors. They're teaching them to other species. 3 months into Dr. Morris's unconventional rehabilitation program, the changes had become impossible to ignore. The Cubs had begun what they called outreach missions, organized expeditions throughout the research facility where they offered assistance, comfort, and what could only be described as professional-grade therapeutic intervention to stressed personnel. Miss Kate, Maintenance Engineer Blorg 7 looks really worried about the quantum flux stabilizers, reported Fang during their daily community needs assessment meeting. His anxiety levels are affecting his work efficiency, and he keeps saying things about impossible deadline pressure. Dr. Morris nodded thoughtfully, making notes on a data pad that tracked the emotional well-being of every being in the facility. That sounds like someone who needs our help. How do you think we could best support Engineer Blorg 7? Snarl raised her paw with enthusiasm that would have been terrifying if directed toward prey instead of humanitarian assistance. We could organize a stress relief workshop. I've been studying the relaxation techniques you taught us, and I think they would help him manage workplace anxiety. And we could make him a care package, added Storm, his tactical intelligence now focused entirely on logistics of kindness distribution. Everyone works better when they know their efforts are appreciated. Zektorin watched this planning session with equipment that had given up attempting to classify the behavioral patterns as anything other than revolutionary social development, unknown implications. The Cubs were systematically identifying and addressing psychological needs throughout the facility using methods that professional counselors would have envied. Forward command. The Cubs have established what appears to be an unauthorized but highly effective mental health support network, he reported, with voice patterns that suggested his reality had been permanently recalibrated. Productivity levels have increased 47% since they began their happiness maintenance protocols. The transformation extended beyond mere behavioral modification. The Cubs had begun developing what Dr. Morris described as advanced empathy skills that allowed them to detect emotional distress with supernatural accuracy. Their ability to sense psychological pain and respond with appropriate intervention had become legendary among facility personnel. How do they know exactly what each person needs? Zektorin wondered aloud, watching as Pack approached a homesick communications officer with a carefully crafted letter expressing appreciation for his work and reminding him that his contributions made everyone feel more connected to home. The answer came during what Dr. Morris called emotional intelligence training, where she taught the Cubs to recognize micro-expressions, vocal stress patterns, and behavioral indicators of various emotional states. But their application of these skills went far beyond simple recognition. They had learned to craft individualized responses that addressed specific psychological needs with surgical precision. The afternoon's activities included what Dr. Morris described as community service planning, where 12 apex predators designed projects to help other beings in the research facility. Creatures whose evolutionary purpose was to dominate territory were voluntarily organizing efforts to benefit strangers. "I think we should visit the injured maintenance staff in Medical Bay 7, suggested Fang, his natural predatory instincts somehow transformed into healing impulses. "They work so hard to keep our habitat comfortable, we could sing for them." "And make them cards," added Snarl, her pack-hunting intelligence redirected toward creative expression. "Everyone feels better when they know someone cares about them." Dr. Morris beamed with pride that somehow made veteran observers feel accomplished despite having contributed nothing to the achievements. "Those are beautiful ideas, children. How else can we show appreciation for people who help us?" The planning session that followed produced community outreach programs that would have impressed humanitarian organizations. The Cubs organized gift-making workshops, designed entertainment activities, and developed what could only be described as a social welfare system administered by creatures that evolution had designed as perfect pack hunters. "Forward command, I believe we need to discuss the implications of what I'm observing," Zektorin transmitted with voice patterns reserved for reports that might reshape military doctrine. "Dr. Morris hasn't just domesticated Voidhounds. She has created the first generation of pack predators, raised with cooperative, rather than competitive social structures. What are the potential tactical ramifications? Unknown, but significant. These cubs demonstrate coordination, loyalty, and strategic thinking that exceeds baseline parameters for most military units. The difference is that their tactical objectives focus entirely on helping rather than harming." Zektorin watched as the cubs voluntarily organized cleanup activities, each one taking responsibility for community maintenance without any need for oversight. They represent a completely new model of pack loyalty, one based on service rather than domination. Evening activities concluded with Dr. Morris conducting what she termed reflection time, where 12 cubs shared their thoughts about the day's learning experiences. Their discussions revealed emotional depth and philosophical insight that challenged basic assumptions about consciousness, morality, and the potential for growth. "Miss Kate," asked Howell, his voice carrying the thoughtful tones of someone wrestling with complex concepts, "why do some people want to hurt others instead of helping them?" "That's a very important question, sweetheart," Dr. Morris replied with the kind of wisdom that made hardened analysts suddenly feel optimistic about universal peace. "Sometimes people who seem mean are actually scared or hurt themselves. They don't know how to ask for help, so they try to make others feel as bad as they do. So, if we show them how to feel better, they might choose to be kind too?" Pack's question demonstrated the kind of moral reasoning that should have been impossible for creatures designed by evolution for predatory competition. "Exactly right, brilliant boy. Everyone has the potential to choose kindness over cruelty, love over fear. Sometimes they just need someone to believe in them and show them how." The cubs absorbed this philosophy with the complete trust that only children could display, unaware that their human caretaker was teaching them concepts that could fundamentally alter the trajectory of interstellar civilization. But the most significant development occurred during bedtime routine, when Dr. Morris tucked each cub into their specially designed sleeping areas with individual attention that somehow made every one of them feel uniquely valued and unconditionally loved. "Sweet dreams, my beautiful pack," she whispered, her voice carrying the same warmth she had used during educational activities. "Tomorrow we'll learn more about how we can use our strength to protect and help others." 12 sleepy responses chorused agreement, their vocalizations somehow managing to sound both adorable and ominous as they expressed devotion to their human pack leader, who had taught them to see strength as a tool for service rather than domination. "Forward command," Zektorin transmitted his final observation of the shift. "The cubs have developed what can only be described as religious devotion to their human caretaker. They speak her name with the kind of reverence typically reserved for pack alphas, but their loyalty is based on love rather than fear. And if that loyalty were to be tested?" Zektorin's sensors tracked the peaceful scene below, where 12 apex predators slept securely under the protection of someone who weighed less than any of their individual paws. Forward command. Based on observed behavioral patterns, I believe these cubs would defend Dr. Morris against any threat with the combined tactical efficiency of their species' most successful pack hunters, guided by moral frameworks that prioritize protection over destruction. Noted observer. Maintain surveillance and report any changes in pack dynamics. Acknowledged. Forward command. Zektorin settled in for the night shift, his recording equipment capturing the steady rhythms of 12 apex predators who had learned to dream about tomorrow's opportunities to help others rather than tomorrow's conquests. The universe, as it turned out, was about to learn what happened when pack loyalty met human moral philosophy and decided that protecting the innocent was a more worthy pursuit than dominating the weak. The lessons, apparently, would be taught by someone who believed every being deserved love, delivered by students who had learned that true strength came from lifting others rather than conquering them. Dawn brought visitors that nobody had anticipated, and certainly nobody had wanted. The transport that materialized at the facility's docking bay carried markings that made experienced personnel suddenly remember urgent business elsewhere. The Crimson Spiral of Alpha-Prime Grix-Morthak, Supreme Pack Leader of the Voidhound Collective. Zektorin's early warning systems erupted with alerts that his equipment classified as immediate existential threat recommend evacuation of all non-essential personnel. Through his observation sensors, he watched as the most feared being in 3-star sectors emerged from the transport with movements that suggested violence was not just likely, but inevitable. Forward command. We have an unauthorized arrival. Alpha-Prime Grix-Morthak has breached our security perimeter and is demanding immediate access to the Voidhound specimens. His transmission carried frequencies that his species reserved for final reports. Estimated casualties if confrontation occurs. Total facility loss. Grix-Morthak stood nearly 3 meters tall, his natural armor scarred by centuries of successful dominance challenges. His presence triggered fear responses in creatures that had never seen him before, a psychological effect that Voidhounds had evolved to establish territory without wasting energy on actual combat. He was, by every metric that mattered to his species, the ultimate alpha. Where are my cubs? His voice carried harmonics that made reinforced walls vibrate with harmonic resonance. I sense pack scent, but no proper submission protocols. This requires correction. Dr. Kate Morris had apparently received the same alert notifications through her habitat's communication systems. Her response to learning that the galaxy's most dangerous pack leader was demanding access to her children was to organize what she cheerfully described as impromptu visitor preparation. Children, we have a very special guest coming to meet us. He's been alone for a long time and probably doesn't know about the wonderful things we've learned together. Her voice carried the same enthusiasm she might use for announcing a surprise field trip. This is a perfect opportunity to show him how beautiful pack life can be when it's based on love. 12 cubs responded with excitement that registered on emotional analysis equipment as genuine anticipation rather than strategic preparation for dominance confrontation. They began arranging their habitat space to demonstrate the cooperative lifestyle they had learned from their human pack leader. "Should we sing the welcome song, Miss Kate?" asked Howell, his vocalizations carefully modulated to express joy rather than challenge. "Everyone feels better when they're greeted with music." "That's a wonderful idea, sweetheart. And remember what we learned about helping visitors who might be scared or angry. Sometimes the most frightening behavior comes from people who have forgotten how to be loved." Zektorin transmitted emergency warnings with equipment that was barely functioning under the psychological pressure of monitoring imminent catastrophe. Forward command, the human is planning to educate Alpha-Prime Grix-Morthak using child development techniques. This represents unprecedented danger to all personnel. Can you evacuate Dr. Morris and the cubs? Negative. The Alpha has sealed all exit routes. We're locked in with the galaxy's most successful pack predator and 12 juveniles who think violence can be solved with therapeutic intervention. The confrontation began when Grix-Morthak entered the habitat complex, with movements that announced his intention to re-establish proper pack hierarchy through overwhelming dominance display. His first action was to emit a challenge roar, that should have reduced every Voidhound in the facility to cowering submission. Instead, he heard singing. 12 cubs had arranged themselves in a welcoming formation and were harmonizing a melody that somehow managed to acknowledge his arrival while maintaining their learned values of cooperation and kindness. Their voices blended in patterns that would have been beautiful if they weren't also completely suicidal. "Welcome, Great Alpha. We're so happy to meet you." Their combined vocalizations carried across the habitat with genuine warmth. "We have wonderful things to share about pack life and family love." Grix-Morthak stopped mid-stride, his aggression circuits struggling to process input that didn't exist in his dominance assessment categories. Cubs approaching him with joy instead of terror represented a behavioral anomaly that his psychological programming had no method for handling. What is this?" he growled, his voice carrying confusion that was somehow more threatening than his previous rage. "Where is proper submission? Where is fear sent? Where is acknowledgement of alpha authority?" Dr. Kate Morris emerged from the habitat's living area, with movements that suggested someone greeting a neighbor rather than facing the galaxy's most dangerous pack predator. "Hello. You must be the alpha the children have been so excited to meet. I'm Dr. Kate Morris, and welcome to our family home." She extended her hand in what appeared to be a standard human greeting gesture. The sight of someone weighing approximately 50 kilograms offering casual physical contact to a being who could eliminate battleships made Zektoran's equipment register readings that his sensors classified as reality error, recalibrate immediately. "I am Alpha-Prime Grix-Morthak," he rumbled, staring at her outstretched hand as if it might be some form of exotic weapon. "I have come to reclaim my cubs and restore proper pack order to this aberration." "Of course! The children will be thrilled to show you everything they've learned. They've been working so hard on their cooperation skills and emotional development." Dr. Morris's tone carried the same warmth she used for parent-teacher conferences. "Would you like to see their latest art projects? They made them especially for you." This was the moment when Grix-Morthak learned that his reputation for inspiring terror had certain limitations. The cubs approached him with handmade gifts that violated every principle of Voidhound's social hierarchy. They offered drawings, crafted items, and what appeared to be friendship tokens to a being whose entire identity was built on dominance through fear. "Great Alpha, we made this for you." Fang presented a carefully crafted sculpture that somehow managed to be both primitive and touching. "Miss Kate taught us that everyone deserves to feel special and loved, so we wanted to give you something beautiful." Grix-Morthak accepted the gift with claws that trembled slightly from the effort of not accidentally crushing something that had been made with obvious care. His neural circuits, designed for processing threat assessment and dominance challenges, had no framework for handling genuine affection from pack members who should have been cowering in submission. This is for me?" His voice carried frequencies that his species typically reserved for confusion rather than aggression. "But I have not proven dominance. I have not established fear response. Why do you offer gifts without proper hierarchy demonstration?" "Because you're family," Storm announced with the enthusiasm of someone who had never learned that pack relationships were supposed to be based on fear. "Miss Kate says family members take care of each other just because we love each other, not because we have to." The philosophical discussion that followed challenged every assumption Grix-Morthak had developed about pack psychology during centuries of successful dominance. 12 cubs explained concepts like unconditional love, mutual support, and cooperative strength with the passionate conviction of beings who had discovered revolutionary truths. "But how do you maintain order without fear?" he asked, his worldview crumbling as he tried to understand social structures that operated without violence. "How do you prevent challenges to authority? How do you ensure pack survival without dominance hierarchy?" "Oh, we have a different kind of strength," Pack explained with the patience of someone teaching basic concepts to a confused student. "We protect each other because we want everyone to be safe and happy. That makes us stronger than just being scary." Dr. Morris had been observing this interaction with obvious satisfaction, apparently delighted to see her educational philosophy being tested by the ultimate authority figure. "Children, why don't you show the alpha how we handle disagreements in our family?" What followed was a demonstration that redefined several fundamental concepts about conflict resolution, leadership, and the practical applications of emotional intelligence to pack dynamics. When Growl and Snarl staged a mock disagreement, instead of the expected dominance battle, they participated in mediated discussion that emphasized understanding, compromise, and mutual respect. "See, Great Alpha?" Howl explained as his packmates demonstrated collaborative problem-solving. "When everyone feels heard and valued, nobody needs to fight. We find solutions that make everyone happy." Grix-Morthak watched this display with growing bewilderment. His entire identity was built on the assumption that strength required dominance, security required fear, and pack cohesion demanded submission to superior force. The cubs were demonstrating social structures that achieved the same objectives through completely different methods. "This is impossible," he whispered, his voice carrying harmonics associated with profound psychological reorganization. Pack loyalty without dominance challenges, cooperation without fear enforcement, order without violence threat. "It's not impossible, Doctor," Morris said gently, approaching him with the same confidence she showed when comforting frightened cubs. "It's just different. These children have learned that real strength comes from protecting others, not controlling them." She gestured toward the 12 cubs who had arranged themselves around their confused alpha with expressions of concern and affection that should have been genetically impossible. "They're still a pack. They're still loyal. They're still strong. But their loyalty is given freely, not extracted through terror." The breakthrough moment came when little Pack approached Grix-Morthak with the fearless trust that only children could display. "Great Alpha, you seem sad. Would you like a hug? Hugs help everyone feel better." The sight of a juvenile Voidhound offering physical comfort to the most feared predator. In known space created cognitive dissonance that Zektorn's analysis equipment simply couldn't process. His recording devices began displaying error messages as they attempted to document behavior that challenged basic assumptions about nature, evolution, and the potential for learned responses to override genetic programming. Grix-Morthak accepted the embrace with movements so careful they barely qualified as contact, his massive form trembling with the effort of not accidentally harming something so small and trusting. For the first time in centuries, he experienced physical contact that wasn't challenge-based or dominance-related. I don't understand," he managed, his voice carrying frequencies that his species reserved for emotional trauma that ran deeper than physical scars. This feels like family," Dr. Morris completed gently. "Like safety. Like home. That's what love feels like. And it's what these children have learned to give and receive." The educational session that followed lasted 6 hours and involved the most comprehensive rehabilitation program ever attempted on an adult apex predator. Dr. Morris guided Grix-Morthak through exercises designed to help him recognize and process emotions he didn't know existed, social dynamics he had never experienced, and concepts of strength that weren't based on intimidation. By evening, the galaxy's most feared pack leader was participating in group art therapy with 12 cubs who had somehow convinced him that creating beautiful things together was a worthwhile use of his legendary tactical abilities. "This is very different," he observed, carefully applying paint to a collaborative mural that celebrated cooperation and kindness. "But it feels right. Like something I lost long ago." "That's because it is right," Storm assured him with the confidence of someone who had never doubted that everyone deserved love and acceptance. "You've been carrying all that loneliness and anger for so long. Now you can learn to let other people help you carry it." The evening routine concluded with something unprecedented in Voidhound history. An alpha participating in bedtime stories that emphasized compassion, forgiveness, and the transformative power of choosing love over fear. Grix-Morthak listened with the rapt attention of someone discovering that his entire worldview had been based on unnecessarily limiting assumptions. "Great Alpha," Howl asked as doctor. Morris prepared to conclude story time. "Will you stay with our pack? We could teach you more about family love, and you could help us protect other people who need protection." Grix-Morthak looked around at 13 beings who had somehow convinced him that strength could be measured in terms of people protected rather than enemies defeated, territory gained through service rather than conquest, and respect earned through love rather than fear. Yes, he rumbled, his voice carrying harmonics that his species associated, with pack bonding rather than dominance assertion. I would like to learn more about this different kind of strength. Dr. Morris smiled with satisfaction that somehow made veteran observers feel optimistic about the future of interstellar relations. Wonderful. Tomorrow we'll start with basic emotional intelligence training and work our way up to advanced community service techniques. Zektorin transmitted his final report of the shift, with equipment that had somehow managed to document the most successful rehabilitation program in galactic history. Forward command. Alpha-Prime Grix-Morthak has been integrated into Dr. Morris's family structure using child development techniques that our psychology departments will need years to understand. And his response to this integration? He has requested permission to stay permanently and learn what he describes as better ways to be strong. Forward command, the most dangerous pack predator in known space, has voluntarily submitted to therapeutic intervention administered by someone who believes everyone deserves unconditional love. The universe, as it turned out, was about to meet its first reformed alpha who had learned that true dominance came from empowering others rather than controlling them. The lessons would be taught by cubs who spoke their human mother's name with reverence, delivered by a pack leader who had discovered that the strongest position in any hierarchy was at the bottom, lifting others up. The revolution had begun with bedtime stories and would be won through finger painting, proving once again that human child development specialists were apparently the galaxy's most effective agents of social transformation.